And now to the latest on the war in Iran. President Trump said today the U.S. will pause escorting ships through the Strait of Hormuz. And there you are. We're taking a live look at the ship tracker. Right now, you can see that all of those ships there are stranded on the other side of the strait. But despite pausing Project Freedom, the U.S. will keep its blockade on Iranian ports. Oil prices falling today after Trump said, quote, great progress has been made in talks with Iran. Meanwhile, Iran's top diplomat is in Beijing for the first face-to-face meeting of the two allies' foreign ministers since the war began. China, a close partner of Iran and the biggest buyer of Iran's crude oil, has called for an end to the conflict. President Trump will meet with the Chinese dictator Xi Jinping in Beijing next week. White House correspondent Mike Carter joins us now from the North Lawn with the very latest. Mike.
President Trump surrounded by UFC fighters in the Oval Office this afternoon, promoting the upcoming UFC fight at the White House. That happens in June. But the president saying over the last 24 hours, the U.S. has had very good talks with Iran. Well, according to two U.S. officials speaking with Axios today, a new 14-point memorandum is currently being reviewed by Washington and Tehran. Now, the top-line points of this memorandum include the U.S. agreeing to lift its sanctions and release billions of dollars in frozen Iranian assets. Also, Iran committing to a moratorium on its enriched uranium, and both the U.S. and Iran agreeing to lift restrictions on transit in the Strait of Hormuz. Here was what President Trump had to say at a Mother's Day event for military mothers earlier this morning.
We're doing very well in Iran. It's going very smoothly, and we'll see what happens. They want to make a deal. They want to negotiate. And I think that military mothers would want to hear that. We're dealing with people that want to make a deal very much, and we'll see whether or not they can make a deal that's satisfactory to us. We have it very much under control. The blockade is unbelievable, and we'll see whether or not they are agreeing. And if they don't agree, they'll end up agreeing shortly thereafter.
Also today, President Trump issuing a new ultimatum to Iran, saying, assuming Iran agrees to give what has been agreed to, which is perhaps a big assumption, the already legendary Epic Fury will be at an end, and the highly effective blockade will allow the Hormuz Strait to be open to all, including Iran. If they don't agree, the bombing starts and will be sadly at a much higher level and intensity than it was before. Just a week out before President Trump heads to China to meet with Xi Jinping, Iran's foreign minister meeting with his Chinese counterpart in Beijing today. Iran's foreign minister Abbas Araqi saying today that Iran appreciates a 4-point proposal put forward by China to uphold and promote regional peace and stability. Meanwhile, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says he'll be speaking with President Trump today and that the two men are pretty much in touch on a daily basis. Netanyahu saying today, we are prepared for every scenario, and that is the instruction I have given to both the IDF and our security agencies. At the White House, for Newsmax, I'm Mike Carter.
Mike Carter on the North Lawn, thank you so much. For more on this, retired U.S. Navy Rear Admiral Mike Hewitt, along with retired U.S. Navy SEAL Command Master Chief Bill Brown. Gentlemen, thank you for your service to the country. We appreciate you being here. President Trump posting on Truth Social, quote, while the blockade will remain in full force and effect, Project Freedom will be paused for a short period of time to see whether or not the agreement can be finalized and signed. President saying the request to pause Project Freedom came from Pakistan and other countries. Admiral, this is a little curious because this looked like it was actually a pretty successful operation to help control and open the strait to at least some flow of commerce. Why stop?
Well, I think putting in perspective, Epic Fury has really met its objectives. Economic Fury, which is the blockade, along with the sanctions and other measures to put economic pressure on the Iranians, continues. Operation Freedom really was a desire to open up the straits to commerce. But my guess is it's paused because we actually have an agreement that has a possibility of coming to a conclusion. And I think the president is recognizing that, and he's giving the Iranians a chance to respond to that 14-point plan. So the pause on Operation Freedom is really a chance to see if we have a deal in the works or not.
Master Chief, the President and the Secretary of State continue to sound pretty upbeat about these talks. But when it comes to the strait, clearly Iran thinks that it belongs to them, thinks that they control it and they should control it. Does a sustained effort to control it on the part of the U.S. and our allies need to be part of the agreement and the overall outcome here?
Well, first, I want to make a correction. I wasn't a CMC. I am a combat veteran Navy SEAL, and I am a partner at Parliamentary Law Group, the firm that represents the Secretary of War. What we need to talk about what's happening here. We're talking about real leverage. We're talking about we are having our Navy assets in the most predominant and strategically effective position they can, where there's absolutely low risk and great reward. So all we have to do now is sit back on that blockade. Let's talk about what else is happening. We're closing off their economic artery. There's a time-sensitive response here by the IRGC. Why? Because guess what? They can't supply so much. So their ability to supply crude oil is coming at an extreme level. And then what happens? Their 70 to 50-year-old oil wells are going to be in deep trouble. And they're going to start to significantly degrade to the point where they're going to have to shut them down. Now let's talk about China. China was their lifeline. 97.6% of crude oil that was being transferred to the Strait there was going to China. Now that lifeline's cut. So guarantee what's happening in Beijing right now is they're telling them to play ball and play ball fast.
Yeah. I want to get back to that in a sec. But there was been some conflicting dialogue from the administration over Operation Epic Fury. Yesterday morning, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth says that it is still ongoing. Let's listen to that.
President Trump has directed U.S. Central Command to restart the free flow of commerce through the Strait of Hormuz under the umbrella of Project Freedom. To be clear, this operation is separate and distinct from Operation Epic Fury. Project Freedom is defensive in nature, focused in scope, and temporary in duration, with one mission: protecting innocent commercial shipping from Iranian aggression. American forces won't need to enter Iranian waters or airspace. It's not necessary. We're not looking for a fight. But Iran also cannot be allowed to block innocent countries and their goods from an international waterway.
And yesterday afternoon, Secretary of State Marco Rubio said that it's over.
Operation Epic Fury is concluded. We achieved the objectives of that operation. I'm not going to, we're not cheering for an additional situation to occur. We would prefer the path of peace.
Admiral, where do you think we really are in all of this? Because we are not, the major military operation or major combat operations have been paused, but there seems to be a little bit of mixed messaging there. Where do you think we really are?
I see no daylight between what the Secretary said and what the Secretary of War said. Epic Fury as a military campaign to eliminate their ability to project power, fund the proxy networks, and have a nuclear weapons program has been successful. Economic Fury, as Bill mentioned, is putting a chokehold on the Iranians, which is bringing them to the negotiation table. Operation Freedom, as the Secretary of War outlined, was a defensive measure. There would be no shots fired unless fired upon. So I see that those three campaigns are in alignment with each other. The real interesting thing is what Pakistan said to the White House, which is, if you could pause on Operation Freedom, we think we have a deal that could be negotiated. And I think the White House smartly took that guidance and really has paused on Operation Freedom. We'll know in the next 48 hours if we have a deal in the works or not. And when I look at the outline of that deal, it really is one that both sides can come to an agreement on, because in effect, Iran actually gets to keep the ability after 5 years to enrich to a low level, which is a civil program, which is in line with the treaty, but they give up any aspirations to go beyond that. And that's really the core of the president's objectives from day one, which is Iran can't have a nuclear weapon.
Yeah, provided that they can be trusted to do that. Mr. Brown, you brought up Communist China, and they've been kind of on the sidelines in all of this. We know that Iran is the third leg of that stool of China and Russia and Iran as that authoritarian bloc. Talk to us about what you think China is conveying to the Iranians right now about this conflict with the U.S. and the West.
I think China's saying, hey, we were buying 1.38 million barrels per day. at $60 per barrel. That's the cheapest major crude on the planet. We want that to get back to business. And right now, that's not happening. China's got a huge supply demand that they need to answer to. And right now, they're losing a lot of money because the crude oil they're getting from Russia and from Saudi Arabia is a lot more expensive. They also have bigger problems. Their refineries are built for Iranian crude oil. Guess what? If there's an issue with the Iranian wells, now they're going to have a lot of restructuring in those refineries that's going to cost them a serious amount of money. And so China is putting a lot, I imagine Beijing right now is putting a lot of leverage on them to get this deal in the works.
Yeah, and certainly President Trump walks into that meeting, I think, next week with a lot more leverage than his predecessor did the last time that he met with Xi Jinping. Admiral Hewitt and former Navy SEAL Bill Brown, thank you so much, gentlemen, for being with us and for your service to the country. Newsmax had some